If you have a hard time with boundaries, how might your life be different if you could say no as easily as a joyful yes? I'm Love Coach Mariya, and for over a decade now, I've been encouraging folks to empower their compassion so it's big enough for ourselves as well as others, and so our boundaries can become healthier than ever. You're listening to Empower Your Compassion, and on this show, we'll be unlocking transformative insights to help you reconnect to your true yes, so you can say no from that more expansive energy and get more of what you want in your relationships and your life without sacrificing your compassion. Are you ready for more love? Let's grow. Hello, dear listener or viewer. In that opener, I mentioned saying no from the more expansive energy of a yes. And one of the beautiful things about healthy boundaries is that it's not all about the no. It's about aligning with your yes and saying no to anything that's not that. And that way, your no is actually in support of your yes. And when you're connected to that, that's how you're able to say no from that energy. So if I'm a yes to having spaciousness in my day and my schedule, I'm going to be a no to, one more thing that'll make it a little crowded. But when I say no, if I turn down an offer or an invitation, instead of saying like, oh my gosh, no, I'm so sorry, or no, I don't have time for that, I can just remember that I'm a yes to my spaciousness, and I can say, no, thank you, I'm good. Obviously, that's an oversimplification, and not all things come as easily. Some things are a bit more complicated, and our lives are a little bit more complex than that. And I do recognize that. And I think that we can do ourselves and our communities a disservice by oversimplifying things. They can be handy reminders once you've already really learned and integrated a lesson. Those short little quotes or clips, that just reinforce the thing. But for people who are trying to figure out boundaries, it's not helpful when someone just says no as a complete sentence. You have to be able to access your yes and your no. And that's a whole process of rooting our security within and becoming boundaried people. I don't think it's helpful to try and just do boundaries. In fact, I think any sort of change that we want to create in our lives is best served by not just doing things differently, but shifting how we be, because everything we do extends from who we be. So my goal is to help you shift the being you're doing from. Recently, I met with a new client who knew that she needed better boundaries because her brother kept reminding her. She was a wife and a stay-at-home mom for a middle school-aged son, and she would often do so much for them that she would blow past her capacity, and then her survival mode would kick in, and she would put her foot down very firmly, such that her husband and son would convey to her that they were perfectly fine with her expressing her needs and her limits, and that it didn't need to come off so harshly. And then she would end up in this sort of shame spiral about essentially this pattern that so many of us fall into, where we say yes too often and then end up saying no too harshly. Or another way to look at it is flipping from flimsy fences to spiked walls. So my mission is to help people install selective gates, and it's a transformational construction project. Rooting our security within is really important. Something that's really helpful, as I explained to this client, is recognizing that these patterns that we get ourselves into of overgiving, people-pleasing, rescuing, are all motivated from a subconscious pattern of needing everyone else to be okay so that we can be okay. It's a safety mechanism, but it's a bit dysfunctional. I mentioned this in the previous episode, and I feel like it's worth reiterating. It is helpful to have a little compassion and awareness about the fact that these patterns are a somewhat failed attempt at self-care, and recognizing that what we're trying to do in helping others is help ourselves. And then once we see that we are trying to care for ourselves, it's just not going according to plan, we can more graciously adjust our approach. One of the things that I think is really, really important in this process is learning how to discern the difference between safe and unsafe discomfort. You may have already noticed that, as the Buddhists say, life is full of suffering or even just a bit of discomfort. But our nervous systems will respond to discomfort in different ways depending on how we got wired in our formative years. One of the unfortunate parts of being human is that our brains tend to favor the familiar over the unfamiliar, even when it comes to discomfort, and regardless of whether it's actually in our best interest. The reasoning behind it, evolutionarily, is that if we took this path yesterday and didn't die, why try something new? Even though it was filled with brambles, we didn't get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, so let's just stick with the status quo that didn't kill us. In our more complex modern societies, though, we can get a little bit more nuanced, and with just a little bit of awareness, we can sort of override those tendencies. Not without some difficulty, though. Our nervous system is what sets off alarm bells and tells us what's dangerous, even when it's a bit misguided. So all this to say that we have an unfortunate tendency to choose unsafe discomfort because it's familiar over safe discomfort because it's unfamiliar. So, using boundaries as an example, it feels more like safety to our nervous system to make sure everyone else is okay, even to our own detriment. Overextending, going way beyond our capacity, depleting our resources, all of that is why it's unsafe. But we will do that because it feels safer, because when we were young, we learned that we needed everyone else to be okay so that we could be okay and safe. And maybe that was true. Maybe that was an effective survival strategy as a small, young, new little soul. But now that we're the adults of our lives, we get to make the choices that are actually in our best interest. And so what that looks like is sometimes saying no. And as I said, that will feel really uncomfortable to our nervous system, but recognizing that it is safe, that people might have whatever reaction they're going to have, but we're capable adults now. We can take care of ourselves. We can make sure that we are resourced, that we're going to be able to weather whatever other people's reactions are going to be to our no. And oftentimes it's nowhere near as catastrophic as we imagine. So this would be an example of a discomfort that is safe to move through. And as I said, unfortunately, a lot of the times what we end up doing is leaning into unsafe discomfort, thinking it's in our best interest, instead of leaning into safe discomfort, which feels more scary because it's unfamiliar, but is actually much more in our long-term best interest. Now, you may be asking yourself, how do I tell the difference? The answer to that is embodiment. Your mind can try and analyze the situation and give you rational explanations, but your body is what is sounding those alarms and ultimately guiding you in one direction or the other. And becoming embodied isn't really going to change that. You're still going to have those triggers of fear, but as you work through them, the volume and intensity will get turned down gradually. The main benefit in getting in touch with our body and learning its wonderful, nuanced, subtle language is that as you become fluent in that, you will start to be able to tell the differences between safe and unsafe discomfort. Because without that connection to your body, discomfort just feels like discomfort. And if it's familiar, you'll push through it. If it's unfamiliar, you'll stay away from it. But that familiarity isn't the only predictor of what's safe and what's unsafe, right? I mean, stranger danger can still be true, and same old can still be safe. But with that deeper connection to your body, and a bit of trial and error too, following an intuition, seeing what happens, spending some time bringing awareness into the sensations that go along with different emotional experiences. It's a practice, and it's almost like taking a course and learning progressive layers of knowledge about yourself and your body and how different vibrational frequencies feel in your body. You'll start to learn that your truth has like a clarity, like a large bell ringing. You can just feel it all the way through you. And you'll start to feel the more chaotic sense of misalignment, where you're almost feeling pulled in multiple directions, and maybe it's often accompanied by some self-doubt. It's a process. And like any process of personal development and refinement, there are ample tools out there for you to work through it on your own. There are also tools such as coaches who can help you expedite the process and provide some clarity along the way. Again, once we get reconnected to ourselves and get in touch with our bodies and our nervous systems and our ability to sort of interpret energetic frequencies, that is how we maintain our authentic alignment. Because just like balancing on one foot, there's all of these adjustments and micro adjustments that have to happen. Going through life, there's always going to be things that will sort of pull you out of alignment. There's always going to be choices and decisions that you have to be able to check in with yourself to determine whether it's aligned with your values, goals, and limits. And again, the mind is a really useful tool for assessing things and comprehending things, but honestly, the body knows. And getting in touch with your body's wisdom is going to help you immensely in knowing when to say no, how to say no, what you're a yes to, and what no's are going to serve that for you. And this isn't a selfish thing either. It's not just about protecting your peace. It's about staying resourced so that you have enough for the people and causes you care most about. And it's also about acknowledging the sometimes unpleasant reality that we are limited beings. It's the paradox of non-duality and duality, if you're into that sort of thing. We are also infinite beings having a finite human experience. And in order to get the most out of this ride, we have to be respectful of our human limitations. And the wildest, most counterintuitive truth is that the more we honor our limits, the more freedom we can enjoy. Without my skin and bones, I would be a pretty useless blob. And with their structure and boundaries, I am able to move forth in the world and be of service to what's important to me. For me, that's exactly this. Empowering compassion is my ministry. And in order to do this, I have to be a no to what interferes with it. When I don't do that, when I say yes to too many things, it scatters my energy and dilutes my power, my effectiveness, my ability to show up for this. So if you've got something that's really important to you, whether it's being a mom or being a friend or a daughter or an author or an entrepreneur, don't let people-pleasing patterns or even a misguided sense that you can do it all get in the way of actually doing your best. And if you're already learning about boundaries, if it's going well, I'm happy to hear that. If you're getting kind of confused or can't really figure out why the things you're doing already aren't working out, then reach out. Go to explorelovingboundaries.com and grab a spot on my calendar and we'll talk for free. I will hear out what you're going through and we'll come up with a roadmap for you. It could involve some free resources. It could involve a referral. I know lots of other coaches. If I don't feel like I'd be a good fit for you, I can send you over to someone else who might be better aligned with your specific needs. I also have some DIY options. I've written a few books. I've got lots of resources. And if working together in one of my programs sounds like the best course of action, then we can absolutely do that too. And I'm on a kick right now where I'm plugging Thanksgiving as a motivator because I do know that a lot of people get really stressed out over the holidays. And a lot of that stress is this story that we tell ourselves, probably that our family has fed to us, that we have to be everything to everyone. And when we can't, we feel like failures. And so we do everything in our power and beyond to not fail. But as humans, we can't really meet everyone's expectations. And the beauty of having healthy boundaries is not just like I'm not just going to tell you to go to Thanksgiving and tell everyone to F off. I want to set you up with a foundation for healthy boundaries that actually nourish your relationships. Granted, not everyone will get on board with it, but you will feel healthier and you will be more effective. And whatever your role on their divine journey, they will integrate it on their own paths. There's an interesting dance between personal responsibility, knowing what's ours and what's not ours, and interpersonal accountability, where we acknowledge the impact that we have on others. And when you can practice both of those things simultaneously, you open up the potential for relational synergy and collaborations that can bring about wonders that neither individual could do on their own. All of this and more is included in my Better Boundaries program, where you walk away a master in the Gates method. And as a recap, it's about grounding in your body and your values, assessing your capacity and your true yes, trusting in the other's ability to manage, expressing your no without disconnecting, and stewarding your precious resources. And I designed it to help you develop and nurture loving boundaries on an ongoing basis and to become a compassionately boundaried person. And it all starts with empowering your compassion and rooting your security within. I'm here to support that. Again, explorelovingboundaries.com. I'd love to talk to you and I'd love to help you get your foundation laid well before Thanksgiving so that you don't get side-blinded by all of those family pressures. If you're new to this podcast or haven't had a chance yet, go back to some of the older episodes. 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 are a breakdown of each of those steps in the Gates method. And if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to do that. I will continue with my ministry, spreading my message of love and empowered compassion. So wherever you're at on your journey, I send you love and courage. Namaste.